1 in 18,000. That's how intense the quest to become a NASA astronaut can be. The competition is legendary, yet behind the rocket-fueled headlines lie surprising truths about who actually makes it into space. Today, we're pulling back the curtain, beyond Hollywood bravado, to reveal what it really takes to join that elite orbit-bound crew. So, you want to be an astronaut? You've probably seen the awe-inspiring launches, the heroic spacewalks, maybe even memorized lines from your favorite sci-fi flicks. But NASA's real process goes way beyond strapping into a rocket. Step 1. Navigating a competition so fierce that acceptance rates sometimes dip below 1%. Step 2. Surviving the rigorous training that weeds out anyone not ready for the harsh reality of orbit. Romantic as it may be, the path demands more than bravery. It demands resilience, problem-solving, and the ability to keep calm when everything's floating around you, including your tools. Those 18,000-plus applications NASA receives, they come from a wildly diverse pool: military pilots, scientists, teachers, doctors, engineers. The selection team doesn't just pick the best pilot anymore. They look for a range of skills that can keep a crew operational. Yes, test pilot experience still helps, but geologists, marine biologists, and medical researchers are just as vital. Modern space missions revolve around science, not just rocket maneuvers. If you're fascinated by these behind-the-scenes insights, tap that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into space exploration. A bachelor's degree in a STEM field is the minimum. 3 years of work experience or 1,000 hours of jet piloting is typical. A master's or PhD can shorten that time, so NASA often ends up with folks whose resumes read like a highlight reel of academic and professional achievements. But it's not all about diplomas. The agency wants people who can thrive in close quarters under constant stress, so the soft skills also matter. If you can't handle daily problem solving with an even temper, your fancy degree won't help much when a life support system malfunctions mid-orbit. Speaking of mid-orbit, let's bust a common myth about perfect vision. Once, NASA did require top-tier eyesight, especially in the Mercury and Apollo days when test pilots dominated. Now, as long as your corrected vision meets certain standards, glasses or contacts are allowed. That alone opens the door for many who once assumed their poor eyesight would disqualify them. And yes, there's a height range, somewhere around 4 feet 8 inches to 6 feet 3 inches. Because spacecraft are built to specific dimensions, too tall or too short, and you won't fit comfortably or reach essential controls. Even that's more flexible than you might think, reflecting NASA's evolving approach to who belongs in space. Pop culture loves the steely-eyed aviator stereotype. In real life, NASA's right stuff now includes doctors, scientists, and even teachers like Krista McAuliffe, who was selected for the Challenger mission in 1985. Such expansions show that going to space isn't just about bravado, it's about combining knowledge, adaptability, and teamwork. Indeed, astronauts spend countless hours in underwater simulations at NASA's Neutral Buoyancy Lab, practicing spacewalks in scuba gear to replicate weightlessness. Comfort with these settings, where claustrophobia can strike, is crucial. If you panic under 40 feet of water, how will you react in the vacuum of space? Training also includes wilderness survival, because a returning capsule might land off target, leaving you stranded in remote terrain. This real-life camping trip might involve staying calm in frigid forests or deserts, relying on a minimal kit. Pop culture rarely shows astronauts building makeshift shelters, but NASA ensures you can handle weird curveballs Earth might throw at you before you even reach orbit. Then there's the language aspect. Since the International Space Station, ISS, involves Russian segments, astronauts must often learn Russian. Imagine running ISS systems while juggling radio calls in 2 languages. Pop culture might skip over this nuance, but it's a huge part of daily life in orbit. You can't just rely on subtitles when coordinating with your Russian crewmates about docking protocols or resupply operations. Each astronaut must bridge both linguistic and cultural gaps. All that effort culminates in a job that, surprisingly, doesn't pay Hollywood-style salaries. Astronauts get a government pay grade, often between GS-12 and GS-13, which might land somewhere from $66,000 to $144,000 a year, depending on rank and experience. Not bad, but not the fortune you might expect for strapping yourself to a rocket and heading 250 miles above Earth. The true perks are intangible. That fleeting view of Earth's curved horizon, the chance to do groundbreaking research, and the intangible overview effect, a life-changing shift in perspective that many astronauts describe after seeing our planet in the void of space. Historically, NASA's astronaut corps was all about test pilots, icons like John Glenn and Neil Armstrong. But as missions evolved to include long-duration stays aboard space stations, NASA began bringing in scientists, engineers, and other specialists. Space travelers now have to conduct experiments on everything from growing plants in microgravity to analyzing cosmic rays. That's why the modern corps is a tapestry of skill sets, not just hotshot aviators. If you do manage to get selected, you don't walk straight onto a rocket. You become an astronaut candidate, facing up to 2 years of training in space station systems, robotics, flight procedures, and more. You learn to spacewalk, pilot NASA's T-38 jets, and handle medical emergencies. You'll rotate through simulations where everything goes wrong at once. The ISS might lose power, your oxygen levels might drop, or a navigation system might fail. The instructors watch how you respond. Do you stay calm, delegate effectively, and find solutions? Or do you freeze? No matter your academic brilliance, if you can't handle the psychological weight of these scenarios, NASA won't assign you to a flight. If you're enjoying this glimpse into NASA's rigorous training, subscribe to our channel Space Culture and give this video a like and let us know in the comments which part of astronaut prep fascinates you most. It's not only about stress, though. Astronauts also juggle the mundane tasks pop culture rarely shows. Personal hygiene in zero-G is tricky. You can't afford stray droplets flying around. Even making dinner can be a comedy of floating forks and drifting tortillas. Over months in orbit, you have to keep yourself physically fit, thanks to mandatory daily workouts, and mentally balanced. Astronauts often plan small pranks or celebrate milestones with each other to break the monotony. Team harmony is no joke. A single meltdown can jeopardize everyone's safety. NASA invests heavily in psychological screening and support to ensure crew cohesion. This underscores the global aspect of spaceflight. The ISS isn't just NASA's domain, it's a coalition of agencies from Russia, Europe, Canada, Japan, and beyond. That means cultural awareness is part of your daily life. So is cooperation. You might celebrate Thanksgiving with American dishes, then switch to Russian customs the next day. Communication breakdowns aren't an option when you're orbiting Earth at 17,500 miles per hour. Amid all this, commercial players like SpaceX and Boeing are launching their own crew vehicles, and private astronauts are popping up in the news. Where does that leave NASA's legendary program? It's still the gold standard for career astronauts aiming for sustained missions. But the growing presence of private spaceflight hints that future astronaut profiles might expand even more. We could see corporate-funded scientists, specialized researchers, or even tourists joining NASA pros on orbiting platforms, blurring the line between government astronaut and private adventurer. Still, NASA's selection remains the rigorous bar for those who plan to spend months in space working on official missions. Another surprising fact? The strong emphasis on outreach. Astronauts aren't just researchers and pilots, they're ambassadors who talk to classrooms, appear on talk shows, and post on social media about everyday life in orbit. NASA values folks who can communicate effectively, telling the story of why we explore space. In many ways, they're also modern myth builders, forging a connection between the public and the cosmic frontier. After all, the agency depends on public enthusiasm and funding. That's partly why the narrative around NASA astronauts has changed. Once, they were stoic figures. Now, you'll see them on Twitter or TikTok, cracking jokes, demonstrating zero-G flips, or showing off how water behaves in microgravity. Astronaut Christina Koch famously shared videos of her floating hair, while Chris Hadfield played guitar in orbit. These glimpses humanize space exploration in ways pop culture never fully captured, until astronauts started doing it themselves, in real time. Remember the dreaded cosmic bathroom scene so many movies skip? Astronauts have posted entire how-to guides on social media, explaining suction toilets, special seatbelts, and the risk of, well, zero-G mischief. It's comedic, but also crucial. You can't hide from bodily realities on orbit. The comedic factor is a stress reliever, but it also underscores how basic tasks become engineering feats in space. Tell us in the comments, could you handle living months in microgravity, or does the mere thought of floating forks sound too chaotic? In parallel, there's the serious side, potential dangers. The vacuum of space is unforgiving. One tear in a suit, one breach in the station hull, and you're facing a life-threatening emergency. Astronauts drill for these scenarios incessantly. From random oxygen loss to catastrophic depressurization, you learn the protocols by heart. Pop culture might glamorize that tension, but it's an everyday wait for real crews. They can't just roll credits if something goes awry. Lives are at stake, along with millions in hardware and years of scientific data. Which brings us to the biggest intangible, the overview effect. Many astronauts describe a profound shift in perspective when they first see Earth, luminous against the blackness of space. National borders seem irrelevant, everyday worries fade. You realize how fragile our planet is, hanging in a vast cosmic expanse. That vantage point stirs some astronauts to advocate for environmental protection or peaceful collaboration on Earth. In pop culture, we sometimes see that epiphany dramatized, but hearing real astronauts describe it is striking. It's like seeing your home from a vantage that transforms your sense of belonging. All these nuances swirl into NASA's famously tough selection process. They don't just want you to survive physically. They want you to return home with insights that benefit humanity, whether through science, engineering, or cultural exchange. That's a weighty mandate, but it's also what elevates the NASA astronaut job beyond mere adventure. The intangible it factor NASA scouts for might be that blend of dedication, curiosity, team spirit, and the ability to inspire. If you can handle technical tasks while simultaneously enthralling a classroom of kids with your stories, you're NASA gold. It's worth noting how the agency's approach to diversity has evolved. Early astronaut groups were almost exclusively white, male, and military. Today, NASA aims for a cohort that looks more like America itself. They've selected women, people of color, and candidates from non-military backgrounds. The effect on pop culture is profound. Young students now see astronauts who share their heritage, gender, or life story, making space exploration feel more attainable. It's about representation, sending a message that it's not just about one narrow mold. Does that mean the competition is less intense? Not at all. More applicants than ever, from all walks of life, submit to NASA's calls. For those who make the final cut, the real work begins. Months to years of training before you might even see orbit. And once you get there, the routine is equal parts science, maintenance, exercise, and the occasional free-floating picture or jam session to keep morale high. The rest of us watch from below, enthralled by the glimpses these adventurers share. Of course, not everyone who trains will fly right away. Some astronauts wait years for an assignment, eventually traveling to the ISS for 6-month stints, if all goes well. Others might never reach orbit but work in critical support roles, communicating with crews, designing new systems, or helping with mission planning. It's a testament to how NASA sees astronauts as long-term investments, not just quick launches. The Corps is a tight-knit family, often working behind the scenes. What's next? As NASA pivots to the Artemis program for returning humans to the Moon, fresh challenges arise. How to live on another celestial body for weeks or months, how to harvest resources, and how to prepare for Mars. Today's astronaut candidates might eventually walk on lunar soil or pave the way for interplanetary missions. That's where the unpredictability lies. Every mission reveals something new about life away from Earth, demanding fresh strategies and specialized knowledge. NASA is looking for explorers who can handle that unpredictability with humor, grace, and determination. So if you've ever thought, could I do that? NASA's criteria might surprise you. You don't have to be a perfect specimen with 20/20 vision and Top Gun skills. You do need a solid STEM background, relevant work experience, decent physical fitness, and the resilience to handle the psychological rigors of orbit. You also need the patience to endure a thorough application process, possibly applying multiple times. And once you're in, you'll find it's not about being superhuman. It's about being human in an environment that isn't built for us, all while keeping your wits, your sense of humor, and your collaborative spirit intact. Even if you never apply, these stories matter. They remind us that space exploration is an ongoing journey, shaped by real people with real quirks. Each new class of NASA astronauts reflects a changing world, one where broader skill sets and backgrounds matter more than ever. Pop culture may still lean on the square-jawed pilot stereotype, but glimpses of reality slip through in social media posts and interviews, showing the day-to-day grind behind the glamorous rocket launches. In that sense, each mission closes the gap between the fantasy of space travel and the authentic human effort it demands. So, what's the takeaway? Becoming a NASA astronaut requires a blend of technical prowess, adaptability, teamwork, and a dash of humor. You'll study, sweat, and face your fears in underwater tanks or cramped simulators. You'll learn to speak Russian, survive off-target landings, and handle weightless bathrooms. You'll experience the euphoria of liftoff and the stark reality of living in microgravity. And if you succeed, you'll join a tradition that links legendary pioneers to the next generation of explorers. If all this leaves you inspired or just more appreciative, keep watching those live streams, reading astronaut memoirs, and tuning in to NASA's updates. Pop culture might paint space as the final frontier, but the real frontier is the dedication and diversity of people daring to leave Earth behind. If you're curious enough, maybe that next NASA call for applications is your signal to try. Or maybe you'll root for those who do, cheering them on as they push humanity one step closer to the stars. In the meantime, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the truth behind NASA's astronaut selection and training. If you're hungry for more insider stories on how space culture and pop culture collide, hit that subscribe button and stay with us. And finally, if you haven't already, subscribe and be part of our cosmic community, because the journey to the stars is just getting started.